Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may not have prepared you for. I am AJ, and sitting across from me, Jason. Jason, how are you doing on this lovely morning?
Loving it, AJ. The weather in Georgia is amazing right now.
Dude, It was like 80 yesterday, and all of a sudden now the high's like, might get to 60.
Yeah, but still this crisp, just absolutely lovely, in between season, spring, late winter weather is amazing.
I think we just went past false spring and we're into winter too.
But it's gonna get a little bit warmer today, and it'll be perfectly pleasant out there. So anyway, I'm loving it. It's great though. But I'm gonna tell you something crazy, and I never would have believed this. People have said it. So every year I've had allergies very bad, right? For the last 10 years. Do you have allergies?
I do.
Yeah. So I, over the past year, have gone to almost a gluten-free diet. Just out of happenstance. I've been trying to focus on eating very non-processed type foods. I ate a lot of meat and salad, quite frankly, and then I like whole grain snacks and stuff like that. And so that's what I've gone to. And it has done away with my allergies. All this pollen out there. Are you sneezing yet?
I haven't been sneezing yet, but I will say, like, that was the joke, because somebody in the program lives up in our doctor program lives up in upstate New York. And they were talking about how it was snowing yesterday. Wow. And down here it was 80. Yeah. But they were talking about snowing, and all I can think is it's pollen in here. That's all we get is pollen. It's a blanket of pollen.
We count our pollen count like it's a humidity count.
Exactly.
And that has always crushed me, right? So, but now I'm feeling nothing. It is, and people told me for a long time that if you take these processed grains out of your diet, it can help your allergies, and it has worked wonders for me. I mean, I used to take a cocktail of Claritin, Sudafed, all those things every day.
It's interesting you say that, because I've reduced the amount of gluten that I've had significantly. Actually, I've reduced the amount of gluten and starches. Mine's just because I need to lose some weight. No, I mean, I could always tell when I take out those kind of things, I do feel better. It's really, really hard to take out like starches when your absolute favorite food is potatoes. Yeah,
that's tough. And pizza's so easy in there when you got kids. You got to put food on the table. Just throwing a pizza out there is the easiest thing in the world, right?
I've actually learned to like cauliflower.
Really?
I've never been a really big cauliflower person, but like lately I would try different things with cauliflower. So I did the whole cauliflower rice thing. And my wife got like a cauliflower crusted pizza, which ended up being, it was decent. It was edible. But we get these things from Costco. It's cauliflower mac and cheese.
Yeah. Man,
those are actually really good.
Really?
And I was really shocked, because they're like the little frozen ones. You just dump them in the oven. Man, those are, I like them.
Well, they're going to figure this stuff out, man. They're going to make some of these, more healthy or
they can just figure out how to make one taste like a donut, man.
Yeah. If they could get a healthy fried donut, then I'm in.
Well, let's get back on topic. Let's put the train back on the tracks right now. Today's episode, we're going to continue on with this college strategy series that we went back to last episode. And this one, we're going to be talking about how to choose your professor. Like, that's one of the things that students, I think, deal with, and they deal with in different ways. And I think it would be good for us to talk about it from a professor's standpoint. So what do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. Good idea. Let me remind everybody first, visit our website, Reschool'd. That's Reschool with a D, not an ED.com. Check out all our past episodes. I mean, we got, 90 some of them now?
Yeah, we're at 92, I believe.
All this stuff is evergreen, right? It's always relevant. So check that stuff out. Send us a message about stuff you want to hear about. Give us your opinion on stuff. We want to hear that too. You can find us on some social media profiles. And of course, whatever app you use to listen to your podcast, please, right? Give us those likes, give us those shares. We got to build the audience. So that's it. Just please do that.
Absolutely. Well, today's quick question, because we are talking about, how to choose your professors. Were you somebody when you were going through undergrad and possibly grad, but more so undergrad, did you really care about, enrolling in specific professors' classes?
Well, sort of. I mean, so early on in my general education classes, I didn't know the professors.
Sure.
And back then, we didn't have Rate My Professor and all that stuff. Everything was word of mouth. So I didn't spend that much time on it. Now, when I got in my major and I knew who the professors were, I did take courses that I had no interest in just because I thought the professor was good.
Mm-hmm.
And, I knew I'd learn something. I knew what to expect, that type of thing. So in a way, yes. Later on, early on, no. What about you? I mean, did you?
I did. I had some. Well, I as I've mentioned many times before, I did have a little bit of insider trading info when it came to enrolling in classes with my dad being the dean.
Yeah.
So he kind of knew where, I guess you'd say, the more problematic professors, where he gets the most complaints.
I was about to say, I want to ask you that. Did your dad ever say, all right, here's a pro tip?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
do not take this guy or this female.
Well, and it wasn't, that part wasn't like that. This funny. That part wasn't the thing that was the insider trading. So like everybody knew at my undergrad, there was a handful of professors like if at all possible, you didn't want to take. And some of them it was next to impossible that you were going to have to take them at some point, because they were the only ones that was going to teach class. But there was a few that there was ways around them, and he would. I remember one semester, I think it was in the spring, I was thinking about taking one of the classes that the professor was teaching, that the professor that you didn't want to have. And he was like, no, don't take it this semester. And I was like, why? He said, because the professor's going to be out in the summer. We're going to have an adjunct. Take it in the summer. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the insider trading from the sense of this is a bad professor or a hard professor. It was from the sense of, I know he's not going to be here, so we're going to have to bring somebody else in. And so I never had to have that one professor. I think I ended up having to have two of them, which even one of them wasn't terrible. But yeah, it was. There was this select few of professors that I was like, I want to try to stay away from as much as possible, just because of the horror stories that you would hear from other students. Like you said, we didn't have Rate My Professor back then, so it was word of mouth. So yeah, I mean, it happens, and I think every student does it. I know from a professor standpoint. So when you were at our school, you taught two classes that tended to be back to back, or some version of it, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely.
What was the feeling from your perspective? I love asking this because I was the same way. I had accounting 1 and then 2. Mm-hmm. What was your feeling when you saw a repeat student come into your class?
Well, so, I always felt like the class was a stage, right? And you kind of build towards the end of the semester. And I was always glad for the semester to be over, just because I'm like, I'm out of stuff. Sure. I can't entertain you anymore. And when I would see the same students coming back to my class, and I saw that all the time, I would be like, well, crap, I can't use the same jokes.
Oh, I still use the same jokes.
Some of the same like stories I couldn't use in the same way and stuff. And I'm like, God, this is going to make my life harder. Yep. But, so anyway, that was my always thought. I liked having, and what's funny is oftentimes it was the repeat students who I didn't really have that much of a relationship with. Yeah. They never came up and talked to me. They never anything, but they did like my class supposedly. So they took me again. And then, but sometimes I got to say, I got to know them a lot better during the second course that they took with me. Yeah. So that was good. And so you might find yourself in that position too. Your professor sees you, you're already a familiar face where he or she doesn't know anybody. Well, that's your opportunity to endear yourself a little bit better to the professor, especially if it's a professor in your major, and that professor can offer long-term career or learning opportunities or advantages for you. So anyway, that's the way I always thought about it. So I would recommend that if you do like the professor's class up front because it gives you a leg up in that second
Yeah, oh,
semester.
absolutely. I've had students that had me for 4 separate classes.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And I mean, those are obviously the ones that I'm the closest to. Like
Uh-huh.
those are the ones that I had the best relationship going into the third and fourth semester. And two, with that being, 3 separate or 4 separate classes, you're talking about ones that were accounting, concentration accounting majors. So they were in that realm. So they understood the value of the networking with the faculty, the professor, whatnot. So
Nice. Well, I mean, that didn't scare you that you teach them 4 separate classes, and by the time they get out, they still don't know anything about accounting.
that was worrisome, yes. But but funny enough, the students those were some of the best students I've ever had. Like those are the ones that you kind of look back and you go, I wish I could have a whole class of those students.
Oh, my gosh, I've had that so many times. And it's always the student on the front row usually
Yep.
because they care, right? And just you're like, where are all these people? Because I think you'll agree with me. The demographic of the classroom is such now that they they are not there champing at the bit for information that you're doling out. It's more
No,
of a I'm there because I have to
check
be,
the box.
and maybe I'll pick up some good learning points while I'm here type
Yeah.
scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the main topic.
All right.
And really the first question is, do you believe that there is a right professor, or is choosing the right professor important to students?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because if you think about it in terms of, the whole learning outcome objectives,
Mhm.
and you think about it in terms of the career objectives, okay? So your professor is going to bring additional things to the table. I mean, we should all know the core content that we're teaching,
Mhm.
but there's all these other things that we can deliver, the stories that make it relevant, specific industry experience that can make it relevant, um, caring about you,
Yeah.
right? Some professors are more personable and get more into the student's life, personality, right? I mean, what kind of person do you get along with better? What's that type of thing. All of that is going to affect your learning. It is going to affect the relationship that you can establish with the professor. It's going to affect whether you're willing to go. Whether the professor in particular is willing to go to bat for the student on things like career recommendations, letters of
Mhm.
recommendation, if you have industry connections, making introductions. I mean, I've had students where I felt strongly enough, and as a professor, you have to be very careful about this, obviously, because you can't use up all your credits with your contacts and things
Sure.
like that. But you end up knowing a lot of people, and I've recommended students directly, and they immediately got jobs because the people at the company knew me, right? And just that alone, right? The combination, the learning objectives and then the career objectives things. So picking the right professor that fits with you and can offer value to you in the way you need it is important. And not all we're not a commodity,
Yeah.
right? Not all professors are the same. Not all of them have the same knowledge and skill set. Not all of them have all the same communication abilities, and I can assure you not all of them have the same industry knowledge and connections. So with that being said, yeah, it's just like anything else. Figure out what you want out of it and make sure the professor is going to be able to help you in that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I can't, without going into more detail, which we're going to be talking about here shortly. Like there is definitely a right situation for certain professors, and there's wrong situations for certain professors when it comes to students enrolling in these classes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough for to me it's tough for students and it's tough for professors. When I was teaching students, I always at the beginning of each class, we always did this questionnaire because I wanted to get to know the students. I wanted to see, where they come from, what their goals are, what some of their hobbies are, what they likes, their interests, whatever. And I always left one section to ask me a question. You can ask me whatever question you want. I was open book. And like I had students ask me like, what is your biggest fear of teaching? Like what kind of motivates you to the way that you teach? And I always said
Mm-hmm.
like, my biggest fear was somebody from my class, which is an accounting class, is going to go and move up into upper level accounting And you get there and the professor's going to say, who taught you accounting? Because you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they say my name. Like that's a huge fear for me because I don't want any of my students. And then two, I took it a step further because we're in undergrad college. Like I don't want somebody from my class to graduate from my college and then go to like a master's program, maybe UGA or GSU, which is close to our college in Georgia. And they get there, they get into the program, they get accepted into the program, they get the program, and then somebody goes, where did you get your accounting degree from? Because you don't know squat. And then everybody from there on out is going to be weighted differently in terms of their ability to get accepted into this program. And I don't want one student's lack of ability to affect other students prior to that. So I tend to be a little bit, I wouldn't say harder, but I'm going to challenge you and challenge your knowledge a little bit more because I want to protect that for every person that follows you. I want to make sure you're kind of you're held up to that standard. Which again, I understand there's more professors above that, but still.
Especially if the student tells you that's their career path, that's their choice. You don't want to open up another standard for somebody. But what I've always noticed is if a student really cared, that's when they endeared themselves to me. They come and ask me additional questions. They want my insights on things. It's just I become more of an influence in their life, and I put more effort into it because of that. It's not that I'm teaching them anything any different, or I'm giving them any favoritism in grading or anything like that, because you can't ever expect that, even though sometimes you will actually get favoritism in grading, believe it or not. We try not to,
it happens.
But it's hard to avoid it. But the biggest thing I would say is, all of a sudden we're dually motivated. I want to help you more. I want to give you the information that you care about, and you're more motivated to do what I'm asking and to try to learn it. So, I've gotten very much into film, television topics, right? And a class I've taught in the past was made up largely of film students. And so I oriented my class, all the examples, all the things I talked about, I oriented them towards those types of students, right? Talked about film projects, talked about the financing of it, talked about distribution and things like that as my examples for, how it works type thing. And, the students appreciated that so much because it was much more of a specialized education they were receiving, right? Something they didn't expect initially, right? So anyway, yeah. So to summarize, yes. And for those out there, who are listening, if there's a takeaway, you should learn about your professors. You should get to know them, personality, all that type of thing, because it does make a difference.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah.
It helps me. I've asked accounting is not the easiest topic, and a lot of times it's really hard to relate it to something that because it's from the back. It's the business's back end. Like it's what we do in the business. We don't do this personal, so you really don't have a whole lot of experience. So it's really kind of hard to translate it into something that you may be more familiar with, or you can understand easily. And I'm a firm believer that if you can relate something to a topic to something that you're familiar with, that you enjoy, maybe sports, music, film, whatever, then you're more likely to get it. And so I talk to a lot of my students, like, so what are your hobbies? Like, what are the things? And I've been able to take accounting topics and turn it into because somebody was, one of my students at one point was really into horseback riding. So we put it into like tack, horseback riding, bridles, tacks, stuff like that. And it was, all of a sudden they got it. Or I've done it in cars. Like they were really into cars. So we were able to, especially managerial, where you can talk about direct material. You can break down a car into direct material.
Oh yeah. And
so they got it. But it takes that connection to begin with for us to realize, hey, this is your bread and butter.
Have you ever had any experiences where there was a huge misfit between you and the student or anything like that? Yeah,
I mean, I think I think every semester is going to be like that. You're going to have students that are going to be like really on board with your style, and you're going to have students that your style doesn't mesh with them. And that is the balancing act that we have to go through as a professor. And that's usually when I talk to students on just kind of outside the class, I'll usually tell them, like, to me, if I look back at my college education, I don't think there was ever a bad professor. I just think that their styles didn't mesh with what my needs were.
Mm-hmm.
It was something just didn't click, because in their head, it's not like they're going, I'm just trying to make this as miserable as possible. They're, I think, 98, 99% of professors out there are trying to do the best for their student. It's just, it might not be the best for every student because every student is different.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly, I mean, obviously I know that I'm going to have students that doesn't mesh well with my style. I think majority of professors change up their style in class every so often. I used to do it one way, and then I did it another way, and then COVID hit, and then I had to do it a completely different way, and then now I'm doing it a different way now, and I'm still trying to figure out what works and what benefits the student the most. The problem is that I think the strategy from the student's perspective has gone down. Like, that's the thing that really, that's probably the most troublesome part for me in my classes, is like what seems to be some of their wants to understand has decreased so much that if it's not given on a silver platter, if it's not just tossed up on a T-ball stand, then it's too hard. Mm-hmm. And like, for instance, my class this semester, okay, so if you break down my grades, and finally, this is the first semester that I've actually broken it down for them, because I mean, it's on the syllabus. I mean, you can get all this information, but the strategy side I broke down for them. So in my class, it's made up of 3 exams. They have an assignment that they have to do for each chapter. They have homework they have to do for each chapter, and then they have a professionalism grade. Okay, so in the assignment for each chapter, it is read the chapter, answer some questions. If you do it 100%, it's a 100. I mean, it's based solely on completion. Like, if you get it wrong, it's irrelevant. As long as you try, you attempt. That's 30% of their grade. 30% of their final grade is simply just doing the assignment. Forget whether it's right or wrong, just doing it. Okay. Homework is 15%. So that's 45%. Now, homework, they can do as many times as they want to get 100. They can just keep redoing it. Very similar to like Mario. If you die in one level, you go back to the beginning, you learn not to do that, and you keep going. Okay, that's 45%. The professionalism is built on, did you attend class? Did you come to class on time? Did you participate in class? And did you hold yourself professional? Like, were you playing on your cell phones and stuff like that? Okay, that's 10%. So 55%, over half of their grade, is simply based on their participation, their time, and their effort. Everybody does have the ability to, but everybody should have 100, if not very close to 100. Okay. That leaves us with 45% of the 3 grades. And like I said, this is the first semester. I just explicitly told them this. If they make 100 on that 55%, all they have to make on the 3 exams is a 33 to pass the class with a C. Like, a 33, like, you could write your name backwards and get close to that.
Pretty much.
Yet I still have people failing.
And, I've run into the same thing. I think it's an overall demographic shift.
Yeah.
With a higher percentage of people going to college, college has become more the 12th, the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th grade. Yeah. And people treat it largely the same way they did high school. If you have everybody there, it makes it more difficult for the students who really want to get the most out of it, who really want to learn the most, because you could introduce topics in so much greater depth and things like that if you had a classroom filled with students who wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
And I think when fewer people went to college, right, and the only people who did go to college felt an additional pressure and an additional want or need to be there, you had less of that, right? You had less of the, I'm just going to coast along and hopefully get through this, and I'll get this certificate at the end that says I have a degree and blah, blah, blah. Now, don't get me wrong. We're still incredibly valuable in terms of the signaling function, because society demands it now, right? Society, it's basically like having a high school degree now. You get through college, it's just an expectation for so many jobs and things like that. But so, yeah, I think it's an entire demographic shift that we're going to have to work with. But students, if they're looking at it from that angle, right, from the way we're seeing it, you can choose the professor again that is willing to accept or adopt that. I know so many professors who simply say, okay, I understand exactly who I'm teaching and what they want, so I just make my material easier.
Yep.
Right. And so many programs that assess on student satisfaction with the course. If you get a high level of satisfaction with your course and you teach a relatively difficult or boring subject, then all that has told anyone is that you are two things. You are entertaining and you are easy.
Yeah.
Because if you weren't easy, students would be upset. And if you weren't entertaining, the students would be upset. And if you were to really drill down and add the academic rigor that people oftentimes associate with college, it would take away some of those elements of entertaining.
Yeah.
Right? It would take away some of those, and it would certainly take away the elements of easiness. So anyway, that being said, there's this vicious cycle of, do I entertain? Do I keep them happy? Do I keep them there? Because you start to lose the butts in the seats, right? Because you can choose the professor you want. You have options usually, depending on the size of your school and the program and the class and all that jazz. But oftentimes there are multiple students, and one professor is going to be the quote unquote easy professor, the entertaining, the likable professor, and one professor is going to be the harder professor, the one that holds you to the standards and things like that. Well, I assume, right?
Yeah,
That's what I've seen.
I agree.
So anyway, I would just keep that in mind. That goes into the equation as to, is it important to choose the right professor? Yes, you're a go-getter, and you're not going to be satisfied with cursory, easy teaching to the lowest denominator, keeping everybody happy. That's going to frustrate you. You're going to be bored. You're going to be playing on your phone or just checking out, wishing you weren't wasting your money. Go get that harder professor, right?
Yeah.
The one that's going to challenge you and you're going to learn more. If you're the person who just, hey, this is the 13th grade and I need to check the box and get through this, I want to be entertained to the extent possible, but you're competing with TikTok now. So, right, that type of thing. Then yes, there's probably going to be a professor for you out there, the one that wants good academic evaluations, and evaluators in schools can say what they wish, but any school that promotes student approval or of your class for purposes of assessment of quality of class and stuff like that, if they promote a high level, if they are searching for almost 100%, we like your class, then you need to ask the question, am I too easy? Am I avoiding academic rigor for entertainment purposes?
Well, what are some we're going to do this two-sided. So what are some green flags and what are some red flags that students should be looking for or looking out for when it comes to choosing professors? Let's start with the green flags. So what are some green flags?
So reputation, talk to people who are like you, right? That are studying the thing you are, that have your personality type and that type of thing. Because you're going to be equally frustrated if you get a professor that doesn't give you the rigor, that doesn't dive into the topic the way you wish, right? So ask your peers. They'll know if they took the professor and are satisfied with it. Now, same goes if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum and you're looking the coast to have an easier, more entertaining class, and you take a very highly demanding professor, you're not going to fare that well, because most of the time those professors, they're going to have no other option but to keep going, and you fall behind and they're going to fail you. And so there you go. Ask your peers. That's number one. Green flag. Do that. If they give him the stamp of approval, someone with your personality type, someone with your vision and goals for the future, they give you the go ahead. You should take that professor.
Yeah, my green. I like what you said about the personality. To me, that was a big one, because I tend to have a more playful personality. I need that entertaining to keep my attention. And when I was able to have somebody as my professor that had that same entertaining kind of personality, where they threw in relevant examples of the topics we were going in. They threw in some jokes. They threw in some kind of attention-getting devices. That kept my attention, and it kept me paying attention more, and it kept me engaged and wanting to participate more. And that helped me a lot. That was a big green flag, and that's typically why I went, to certain professors more than once, is because that just the engagement there, it made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another one to me when it comes to a green flag has to do really with your goals. So you'd mentioned this before, like, are you somebody that's trying to get something out of it, or are you just trying to get out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And especially for me, when it came to really business classes, but specifically accounting classes, those are the classes where I look back and go, okay, I want to have a good professor. I want somebody that's going to challenge me to where when I get out of class, I'm actually going to know this stuff. Versus if it had nothing to do with business and I'm just trying to get out of it because it's on my curriculum, my degree sheet that I have to follow, but it really doesn't have a whole lot of direct impact on my career goals. So for me, it was really looking at choosing the professor based on what my outcomes were,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that I was going to fulfill those outcomes. I was going to achieve those outcomes to the best of my ability. I wanted to make sure that I was going to be challenged in, like I said, specifically accounting classes, because that's what my degree is.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it, so funny that, you get in these, I go to accounting class, I go to teach accounting class, and I have these students that are accounting majors, and sometimes they're the least engaged students of any of them. And I'm thinking, if you're an accounting major, this is something you perhaps need. You may want to pay attention to this one, but it is what it is. And that's my biggest green flag that I can tell a student is make sure you're getting what you need out of it,
Mm-hmm.
especially towards your major. Do you have any other ones?
Yeah, I would. So, we focused, or you just spoke, getting what you need out of it in terms of your major and what you're focusing on. A lot of your professors are practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a PhD. Okay, you're getting one, but
Yeah.
I could do legal research, and I've done a good bit of that and published some in that way. But I've never considered myself a researcher, and don't truly aspire to be. I do the minimum amount. I can research. I know how to do it in a certain context, particularly the legal transactional context. But a lot of your professors are like me and focus more on how you do these functional things in society. Like I focus on transactional legal work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Contracts, funding deals, that type of thing. If that is your interest, make certain that the professor that you choose can offer you what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So you can take a course on contracts, right? And talk about contracts and the elements and learn to analyze them and blah, blah, blah. But if you want to hear some entertaining stories about what you included in a contract and why it was really valuable, or you want to hear about this funding deal, right? I've reviewed contracts for people going on Shark Tank, right?
That's
So I
cool.
can talk about that 140-page contract that they have to sign just to be able to present on the show, right? And I can talk to them about, hey, this is the behind the scenes, like this is what you don't see about the program type thing. And I'm not going to mention any of those things right now, just by virtue of, for a number of
Mm-hmm.
reasons. But that being said, it surprises people, and I talk about those things. And so people who actually care about that stuff, all of a sudden you see their eyes open up, right? They get engaged, they're that type of thing. So when you choose a professor, okay, there's always going to be that academic piece, what they expect from you, that type of thing, how entertaining they are and whatnot. But make sure they can help you career wise. Now, some situations, like, yes, I tend to know some people in certain types of industries. So if you want to do one thing, could I introduce you? Could I help you get an internship? Yeah. In many situations, I could. I rarely do that for students because out of a class of 40, I've rarely found more than one student that I would be willing to attach my name to,
For sure.
because I just didn't see their seriousness, and certainly their academic performance didn't meet up to what I believed was suitable. But I can name multiple students over the years that I have recommended, and it took them down an entire career path, right? Because it was a connection. You're going to find at a lot of the schools that you will attend, there are professors who are researchers, and those professors can be fascinating. Okay, they have a wealth of understanding in whatever area that they're researching, and if that's your pure interest, go down that path. Right, and I would say that's particularly true with your English or some of the other liberal arts and your sciences, because they tend to go hand in hand,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when it comes to more your practitioner fields, there's going to be a big gap between the practitioner group and the researcher group. And one offers advantages that the other doesn't. So figure out which one means the most to you and go down that path, right? Because I think by and large, it will mean more in terms of engagement. You'll get more out of it. And certainly, if there is a career objective on the end that can be fostered by that, it's going to make a difference. Okay. Choosing that right professor, practitioner, researcher, that type of thing. So, like I say, professors are not a commodity. They come in all shapes and sizes. They come with all abilities and things like that. The course has its boundaries, the learning objectives and outcomes, but how it's delivered is largely the function of something we call academic freedom, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the autonomy of the professor to deliver the material in a way that is unique to them, right? In the classroom, and institutions that don't have academic freedom, that try to collar how you present information, exactly what you're presenting, and even the teaching techniques you do, when they try to enforce that, that's all right. That can, in a way, right,
More
affect
times than
or
none.
yeah, I mean, it collars the professor and the ability. So anyway, that being said, something you should know, something you should understand, something that should, in a way, influence your decision making for what classes you take and why.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. One thing I will say, well, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the red flags. Okay.
Okay.
One of the things that I usually say is a red flag, and I'm saying this from the action of the student, not the professor's red flags. I know that the question is geared towards what are some red flags from the professor that students should stay away from, but this is an action from the student's perspective that they may want to be cautious of, and that is, using these sites like Rate My Professor, because you got to understand what they're there for. Like, you got to understand who goes there.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically not somebody who's going to say, this is a really good professor that challenged me hard and I got some. It's usually ones that's like, this is an easy A, or I failed this class, so they're terrible. Be cautious of that, because you may be losing an opportunity to actually learn from somebody who is very passionate about it. And whoever wrote that review or whatever, it may have just not meshed with their ways, their personality. And so just kind of that would be a red flag from the student's perspective. Like, just be careful of that. Be careful about talking to your friends. Understand like the context in which it goes through. Would be my first one.
Yeah, I've seen firsthand students who love a class that or are contented by the class. They'll tell you that they haven't left a comment, right? I
Yeah.
mean, who goes to forums to leave comments on things other than complainers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, is it a good idea to look at some of these sites and say, hey, take it for what it's worth? But if you see a consistent pattern of complaints over time, that may very well be valid.
Yeah.
Okay. But one-off complaints, a mixed review where you're seeing a good number of negative things, but they're saying different things, mixed in with positive reviews and stuff like that. Usually what I've seen in that scenario is the professor is trying
Mm-hmm.
and they are challenging. They are hard.
Yeah.
So when you're hard, some students will gravitate towards it like crazy. They feel pushed. They feel like they're growing, and they really appreciate it. They love what you're offering. The other students that fail, they go and complain.
Yeah, that was my talking about the way my class is structured this semester. Like, I guarantee I'm going to have some student go there and they were like, this is a terrible class, blah, 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 blah. And then in that, I think Rate My Professor, they ask you like, what was your final grade in the class? And like, they say F.
Yeah.
It was too hard. And then you don't have the context behind it that all you had to have was an average of a 33 on the exams to pass the class.
Yeah. I've gone through periods where I've demanded more academically, and my ratings went down like crazy just by virtue of I was holding them to a higher standard. I will say this: my positive comments went up.
Mm-hmm.
Students were very thankful, some of them, but I got this huge, animosity from the students who just wanted to coast through. They're like, "Oh, he expects too much. This is, he's not fair. He blah blah blah. He does this. He requires this. He that type of thing." And they look for anything in the world they can to complain about. And
yeah, I remember I got one on my performance evaluation. Not I don't care about Rate My Professor, but your course evaluations. I remember I got one that said he makes us write too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them notes. All they had to do was fill in some blanks. Like, I gave them every chapter's notes that had some fill in the blanks on it, but I made them write too much. I'm like, geez, like I thought I was doing good.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some other red flags from the professors that outside of the Rate My Professor stuff or the evaluations that students should pay attention to?
Are they around?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Their absence from the campus environment. They're showing up late to class, things like that. Not being there for office hours, not showing up to additional things. Because being a professor, like I say, you get your researchers, and they tend not to be involved in anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean that's just the tendency. So if you get these bigger R1 schools, you get your researching professors. They're necessary to boost the college's reputation, and they're the real breadwinners for the college because they raise the rankings of the college and students go there for that. But when students get there, they start to realize that the lower level, the in the practice professors, the instructors, they're the ones that really add all the value for students. And in the hierarchy, in the pecking order, they are not the ones that get the compensation. It's those senior researching professors that are renowned in their field and all that jazz that really get all the acclaim and all that kind of stuff. But so the researching professors don't tend to be there. They don't tend to be involved. They don't tend to really build the students' experience outside of the classroom, the club involvement, bringing in speakers, that type of thing. You're in the practice professors, colleges name them differently. Sometimes they don't have an in the practice class. If they do, they'll have assistant, associate, full professor in the practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they'll just leave everybody as what they call lecturers or
lecture instructors.
Instructors. And there'll be senior lecturer, senior instructor, that type of thing. So you'll see that these tend to be your practitioners. And they tend to, once again, be more involved in everything that goes into the life of the student. Club involvement, speakers on campus, outside of classroom coaching, career coaching, internships, all of these things. So, that being said, right, the one red flag there that you need to be aware of is what are you looking for? And if you want that, if you want the involvement, you want to build a community, look at the professors that are going to be that for you, because there are going to be a lot of them who, outside of 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after class, you will never see them.
Yep, agreed. I've had those professors too, and also at the turn of their getting tenure.
Yeah,
you start to see that take a hit as well, and that's the unfortunate downside of having a professor that you like one semester and all of a sudden they get something changes and the next semester is not the same. It can definitely have an impact. So, well, I don't have any other red flags. Do you have any?
No, I mean, that's what I'd say. Academically, get out of it what you want out of it. Professionally, get what you want out of it. Make sure you understand who your professor is and why. Use the right resources to be informed about your professor, and you are ready to go. That's how you're going to make the best decisions for yourself.
This has been a good one. This was kind of off the cuff. We've got some topics, but this one just kind of came to mind to us right before the us recording this. So I've enjoyed it. I thought this was a really good one.
Well, like everything, we got a strong opinion about all these things we talk about.
We're the masters of our opinion, that's for sure.
So you've got our 2 cents. Go spend it how you will.
Yeah, absolutely. You got any parting words before we head out?
Just check us out on the website, right? Reschool'd.com. That's where you're going to see all our stuff. And of course, you've got to share us. You got to like us. You got to give us all those stars. You got to tell your parents about it at Thanksgiving dinner and all that kind of stuff.
You don't want to talk about politics. You want to talk about podcasts.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. Well, we hope you enjoyed the show. We hope to see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.